now we're going to Parliament where vetting of nominees for ministerial appointment is ongoing. And the first person for today's session is Ignatius Baffour-Awuah, who's the Employment Minister Designate.
Yeah, we had the question, but when it comes to policy, NAPCO is not directly under my ministry. So ideally, perhaps I would say that I should not be the one to respond to this question. But since he also added a general issue of persons looking for employment and they being asked to produce their party card, maybe I may have to come in at this juncture. What I do know about NAPCO is that when it was time for recruitment, they did advertise on the web. And I have a difficulty to believe whether on the web only persons belonging to one particular political affiliation had access to that. Most of the recruitment were coordinated at the district assembly level, but I'm not aware of they being coordinated at the DC's office. But that is why we are also opinion leaders within our communities. If in case we find somebody in society abusing the law like this, that it behoves on us to be able to draw the authorities' attention to it, such that it is addressed. The right to work is a must for everybody. You shouldn't belong to a particular political party before you should have the right to work. And I think I will at any time condemn such an action, should it come to my notice. I am not aware of what the honourable member is talking of.
Mr. Chairman, the nominee said that NAPCO is not under him directly, but you were always reporting on number of jobs NAPCO has created anytime you met the press. So why are you saying today that NAPCO is not? I know that it's not directly under you, but you have been accounting for number of jobs NAPCO has created. In the same way, you are not responsible for teachers in this country. At any time there is a industrial unrest in the teaching sector, it's also fall under your domain. So why do you mean by NAPCO recruitment doesn't fall under you? Mr. Chairman, my second question is.
So all that was not part of your question.
Just to draw his attention.
Oh, no,
that as a labor minister, he was reporting on how many jobs NAPCO has created. In one breath, you are reporting how many jobs, but you don't want to account for it. Mr. Chairman, my second question. On February 1st, 2017, 1st May 2018, the Honorable Minister is quoted to have said that Akufo-Addo's government has created 1 million jobs so far. Can you tell this committee how many jobs Akufo-Addo's government has created by the end of 2020?
Thank you, Honourable Chair. If you indulge me, I will first make an attempt to answer the first point that you made. A report on jobs that Planting for Food and Jobs have created. But you agree with me that Planting for Food and Jobs is not a product under my sector, but I do report on that. So the fact that I report on NAPCO does not mean that I'm the minister responsible for management of activities of NAPCO. But on the number of jobs, yes, it is true. On 1st May 2018, I indicated that the government of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo had created approximately 1 million jobs. And even though I don't have the exact figures for end of 2020, the last time we reported on was in September 2020, and then the figure was around 3 million jobs. 3 million jobs. Yes.
Minister nominee, thank you. How
was 3 million jobs created, and the distribution. You want to share the statistics with us, sector by sector? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Chair, I will make the details available to the committee when I get back to you. But I think that I have, on a number of occasions, even come to this House and have given these figures out already. But if still it is the pleasure of the committee to have the details, I'm more than willing to.
And Chairman, another clarification: the 3 million jobs, public sector or private sector, or a combination of the two?
Combination of all.
Mr. Chairman, the nominee said in September the government has created 3 million jobs. On 13th August, the Vice President also said that the government has created 2 million jobs. 2 million jobs. 13th August. That was what the Vice President said, that the government has created 2 million jobs. And you're also saying that in September, you have created 3 million jobs. Is it that between August and September, you created additional 1 million jobs?
Well, I don't know, and I'm not aware of what you're talking of, but I have officially turned out the 3 billion jobs, and I will be prepared to defend the 3 million at any point in time, that when I get the opportunity.
And you promise, Chairman, you make the document available to us?
Maybe even by the close of the day, I will.
Yeah, we should, and with dedicated emphasis on the dichotomy between jobs created in the public sector and those created in the private sector. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, my last question.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, my last question has to do with the Labour Act. The Labour Act. The Labour Act. The Labour Act talks about casual workers. Casual workers. Casual workers. And that companies or industries are not supposed to engage casual workers more than 6 months. I mean, after 6 months, you have to regularize their employment. But we know that in this country, there are a lot of companies and industries, because of the Labour Act, they engage the people after 5 months, and then they terminate their casual employment. After 5 months, then they re-engage them. What is your ministry going to do to ensure that the industry adhere to this requirement by the Labour Act?
Honorable Chair, I would love it if the honorable member will refer me to the appropriate sections of the Labour Act so that I make reference to that.
No, are you suggesting that the specific issue he raises is not in the Labour Act?
I have actually heard this severally, but sometimes I also think that, Honorable Chair, I would love, given how sensitive this issue is and the nature of it, I would love if this were perhaps answered outside the distance, because outside public view, in the sense that you have active players within the labor industry. Managing and not going against the law in itself is not an offense. But if you are also not very careful, you will also have people who will take advantage of the law and then will be abusing the right of people. And that's exactly what the honorable member is referring to. Indeed, if they manage their labor the way he described it, as I said, it is not against the law. But you and I also agree that that is not the best way to do, because everybody enters employment and will want to be assured that he has a reliable job every day. He doesn't get up one day and then he's told that tomorrow you can no longer come to work. But fortunately for us, what we are doing is that we have identified some of these weak posts within the Act. And we have started a process of amending aspects of the law. Indeed, we've gone very far with our development partners to tease out those areas which we think are not of major interest to the public. And therefore, we are trying as much as possible to
Chairman, with your indulgence, Minister, you see, in responding to the Honorable Samson Ahi, you said that he should refer to sections of the Labour Act. You too, you've just said you want to amend sections of the Labour Act. Tell us which sections of the Labour Act you want to amend. But to put his question in context, casual workers have no guarantee of employment security. Casual workers in Ghana have no guarantee of income. Some of them are abused and paid below even the minimum wage in people's homes quietly. How do you seek to address that?
If anybody engages somebody and then pays the person below the minimum wage, that is against the law. That is against the law. You can't engage somebody and pay that person below the minimum wage. Because the minimum wage is that wage below which you cannot engage somebody and then pay the person. So if you so pay the person below the minimum wage, you are acting illegally. But then if you engage the person within the period before the 6 months and disengage that person, that one is not against the Act. But to answer the leader, let me say that it is not just one aspect of the Act which is being amended. We have actually had a stakeholder meeting, and we have sent words to them that they should actually look at the Act and make proposals as to which areas they think needs to be amended. So we have had several proposals. It would be unwise for me to say that it is only this aspect that is being amended. Depending on what the stakeholder is looking at, we get feedback from many of them.
Reverend. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, Honorable Minister Designate. On a similar matter, may I refer the Honorable nominee to Section 65 of the Labour Act, which makes provision for procedures to be undertaken under redundancy, and Section 66, where some exceptions are provided for. And with the indulgence of the chairman, to just state Section 66, the provisions of this part do not apply to the following categories of workers. Workers engaged under a contract of employment for a specified period of time, and then the C, workers engaged on a casual basis. In the mining industry specifically, the Ghana Mine Workers Union have severally over the past decades and also in recent times bemoaned the trend of increasing non-standard forms of employment, fixed-term contract casuals by multinationals. In cases even where multinational firms in the mining industry have a mine life of 25 years, 20 years, still resort to some form of outsourcing casual workers, fixed-term, just because the Section 66 provides them the latitude. What is your view on this, and what would be your steps you would take to ensure that the ordinary Ghanaian worker is given the adequate protection? Thank you.
You see, Honorable Chair, I indicated earlier on that certain things may not be moral, it may not be morally right, but then somebody can exploit the weaknesses in the law and take advantage of it. A typical example is what you were just referring to. One counts for a mining lease over a period of time, and then just before the expiration of the lease, it says that, no, I'm going to change the form of my work, maybe from direct production to outsourcing. If the person does so within the remit of the law, there's no way you can fault him, because yes, what he or she is saying is within the confines of the law. But as to whether morally the decision of the company is the best, is a different thing altogether. So we have had cases, especially in the Tapa enclave, where some gold mining companies actually had to change their forms of operation. Of course, you cannot say that you will restrict a prospective investor on how he or she will want to operate, provided it is within the law. You have to allow, except that that which is due the worker must be given to the worker. Appropriate compensations must be paid, and then, as much as possible, the road to changing the form must also not be disadvantageous to the worker. They must, in a way, find a way of getting them permanent work, getting them work as well. So, in the particular case that you are referring to, we had a lot of negotiations, and even though it was a difficult pill that the workers had to take, it was also not against the law. So eventually, they were duly compensated, and many of them were also given employment within the outsourced companies. So that's what I do know about it.
Mr. Speaker, just a quick follow-up. In the same vein, in 2017, Goldfields Ghana Limited conducted a heavy redundancy, and in the process, about 2,500 staff were laid off and reabsorbed following the restructuring or outsourcing of their mining and heavy maintenance portfolios. Subsequent to that, these affected number of staff have been denied the opportunity to join labor unions. Would you investigate that, and when given the nod, and to ensure that the affected staff are not denied their right to join labor unions? Thank you.
Honorable Chair, I am aware of this case he just referred to, and it's a case we have actually handled. In fact, we actually mitigated the effect of the redundancy. We negotiated with both parties and was able to resolve the issue. So, to the best of my knowledge, there is absolute peace at the place. If there are any fallouts, and they let us know, we'll pursue it further.
Very well. Honorable Agalga.
Thank you, Honorable Nominee. Sometime last year, your ministry appeared before the Public Accounts Committee and gave strong indication to the effect that Cabinet had given approval for your ministry to develop a roadmap towards the unification of all pension schemes in our country, the resultant effect of which was to end up with the security agencies other than the armed forces migrating from the the capitated pension scheme to the SNP pension scheme. Now, following that announcement, a lot of agitation occurred within the ranks of the security agencies other than the armed forces, and this prompted the minority to react. And the reaction was that your own government should take immediate steps to amend Section 31 of the National Pensions Act to include the other security agencies apart from the armed forces as an exempted group from the SNP pension scheme. Early this year, in January, when the president, just before the swearing in, the last State of the Nation address, President Akufo-Addo announced that he had instructed that an amendment be done in respect of the Section 31 that I alluded to earlier on. I'd want to find out from your outfit what initially informed the decision of government to migrate the security agencies other than the armed forces from the captivity pension scheme.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, Act 766, which is the new Pension Act, has a provision which says that the minister responsible for pensions should, within 5 years of coming into effect of the Act, work towards unifying all pension schemes within the public space. When ideally this should have been done in 2015, but it was not done. So when I assumed power, it was one of the issues which I had to be confronted with. In actual fact, we could also not implement the new act in 2015. We had to ask for extension because most of the schemes were not ready. So naturally, that was also one of the reasons which led to it not being handled at that time. So yes, there are quite a number of institutions which are currently not under the SNP pension scheme. We have so many other schemes. So we sort of started working towards unifying all these schemes. And then in the process, we had representation from the security agencies indicating that their work is not different from that of the military. And they are surprised that perhaps we will treat the military in a different way from them. So they will want a situation where they will also be treated in a different way. So eventually we'll have to resort to the employer, which is government, and to seek their counsel on that. And the decision of cabinet was that yes, we can unify all other forms of pensions, but exclude that of the security agencies. So that's the mandate we have now, and that's why we're going to work with.
Chairman, with your indulgence, what the Honorable Agalga just asked you yesterday, your colleague, the Minister for Interior, was here. You are speaking to what he probably indicated as a collective decision of cabinet, which suggests that cabinet is departing from pension unification to one for which you are granting moratorium for men and women in uniform with their security agencies. Are you working in collaboration with the Minister for Interior to amend Section 30 of the Act, Act 766?
I'm working not only in collaboration with the Minister of Interior, but also with the Minister of Justice, the AG, because eventually he will have to help us with the drafting and everything. So yes, and I indicated earlier on that this is a cabinet decision, and certainly a cabinet decision involves all members of government.
Now, my last question to you has to do with the SNP pension scheme. You earlier talked about the need for unification under the Act 766. Now, many public sector workers, including teachers, have complained bitterly that following their migration from the captivity pension scheme to the SNP pension scheme with its 3 tiers, they have become worse off and that when they go on retirement, what they take home as a package is very meager. Some have actually indicated that a lot of their colleagues died premature deaths because of what they take home as pension benefits. And this has been occasioned largely by the migration from Cap 30 to the SNIT pension scheme. What do you have to say about this?
Partner, GIZ has also been a supportive partner in this direction. As we said, we have renovated and brought back to life 8 of them. We are in the process of adding some 20 more. It is our wish that we will be able to cover every district of the nation, but it will require a lot of resources. So we are moving gradually. But even going beyond that, we also want to develop a web system where you don't necessarily even have to walk to a labor office before you can go and lodge your information. So we want a situation where you can have an application of your phone, and then by using the web, you can log on your information so that whatever you want will be logged on. I think that is the way to go. It's very critical. Critical in the sense that apart from it being a marketplace where job seekers and job owners will meet and exchange ideas, it also gives us a direction as to what labor requirement of the nation is. So it can be a pointer to the training institutions as to what type of skills to train so that it will be relevant to the labor market.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, honorable nominee, my first question has to do with child labor. You know, the U.S. Department of Labor, in their 2018 report, raised issues about worst forms of child labor in Ghana, especially in agriculture, fishing, and mining sectors. What concrete steps have you taken to address this issue of child labor in Ghana?
Thank you very much. Honorable Chair, I am aware of a study commissioned by the U.S. Department of Labor on the child labor situation in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire in the areas of cocoa production, but not with reference to other areas. They have so far conducted 3 different surveys. The first one was done in 2008, and then 2013, 2014, and the last one was in 2018. Honorable Chair, the results of that survey is that in most of our cocoa growing areas, more children are engaged in cocoa production. The implication is that if we are not very careful, consumers may be forced to reject cocoa which is produced with the labor of children. So I agree with the honorable member that this is a very important issue that needs urgent attention. As a result, together with our partners, we have developed a national plan of action. In fact, I inherited one from my colleague, which got exhausted or elapsed in 2018. And subsequently, we have also developed another one, a second national plan of action to combat child labor. And what we do is that we have been able to bring all actors within the child labor environment, and then we meet and discuss, we coordinate their activities and also monitor them to find out what they are doing to help eradicate child labor. I must agree that we have a huge tax on our hand. A huge tax in the sense that I remember in this very house, once a colleague of ours brought a statement on child labor, and I heard some of our colleagues contributing to the statement. It showed you the level of understanding of issues of child labor, even amongst members of this house. And we are supposed to be the lead eye of society. So if we ourselves do not even understand and appreciate issues of child labor, then
I'm interested in that part about issues relating to state. Is it the defined by them or defined within our circumstances?
Unfortunately, we don't have our local definition of child labor. And
so it's their definition of child labor that is being used to judge our local circumstances. Is that right?
Honorable Chair, it is not their definition of child labor, it is our definition of child labor, because we were also party to it. We have developed for ourselves what we call National Hazardous Activity Framework. So when anybody comes to do a survey, they use our own document to conduct the survey. So our document is not different from that which has also been prescribed by ILO and other international organizations. So that's why I said it is not their definition, but our collective definition.
On a number of occasions, the members of this House have been invited to meet some of these groups. I recall the last meeting I partook in was at the Kofi Annan Center. And the things they described as child labor are things I partook in my days growing up. I'll spend the weekend with my grandmom. I'll walk with her to farm and back. I'll carry loads. Sometimes it's plantain, sometimes it is cocoa. And if you look at that, they call that child labor. But this is how, it's my social setting. Is that what we're using to describe our system as child labor?
Yes. I think even this debate, even though I'm not supposed to debate you, Mr. Chairman, it's a clear pointer to the fact that society still has a difficulty in understanding issues of child labor. And I may differ from your position, because I thought the same way when I had not had the opportunity to handle the subject. But when I had the opportunity, my appreciation of the issue has actually changed. And Mr. Chairman, I beg to say that it is a major social problem. Yes, you may be lucky, you succeeded one out of the lot to be able to confront the problem. But then, just look back to those days, the people that you were in that same practice with, how many of them have been able to advance to your level? Many of them may have lost out because of child labor. And as much as possible, we should encourage everybody to be out of this.
That's my first question.
Yeah, please continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My second question has to do with job creation. Earlier on, Honorable Samsonahi asked of the number of jobs that you've created in the last 4 years. And you indicated that you've created 3 million jobs and demonstrated your readiness to defend that anywhere. When you read your handing over notes, page 35, this is what you stated. During the period, 2,740,472 jobs were created in the formal sector. Out of this figure, the Planting for Food and Jobs program created 2,299,627 jobs. This is what you stated. And then you come to the 2020 budget. You indicated that in the public sector alone, You created 350,000 jobs. But when you look at the figures, because there are budgetary allocations to pay the people that you have employed, you realize that in 2016, the total number of people on government payroll was 626,781. In 2020, as it is reported in the 2020 budget, that provides the ceiling for the entire year, is 702,528, indicating that over the 4-year period, the number has increased by just 75,747. So where do you get this 350,000 figure from? And besides the 3 million you talk about, you are reporting on 2.7 million.
Honorable Chair, can I answer him? Yes. The Transitional Provisions Act actually stipulates that handing over notes should be ready by middle of the election year. So if I reported in the handing over notes, it is not at the end of the year. So I am telling you, and I cannot come before this committee and lie to the committee. I have indicated my readiness to supply you with the information by the close of day, and I'm ever willing to do that. So I still stand by what I said. If I'm given the opportunity to update the handing over notes, this will not be the figure that you have, because the handing over notes was done, I think, 6 months even before the elections. On the issue of public sector workers, you know, it is not every public service worker that is paid directly by controller. You should know. You have those that are paid directly by controller, especially those in education, those in civil service, local government, and what have you. But there are some that are subvented, and their records may not even include what you have. So if you indulge me, I will say that, why don't you wait? I'm saying that I'm going to provide this information. Why don't you wait to have the figures, so that perhaps if you have any issue, you raise about that. You see, when you are talking about increments, you also lose sight of the fact that the figures are not static. You also have others that are retiring within the same period. So if you just use marginal increment without also taking into consideration those who are also leaving the system, then you may be wrong in your assumption. So trust us, we are experts in this, and for this, I think that I can provide you with the right information.
Mr. Chairman, my last question. Irregular migration. You recall that in 2020, in your budget, you promised to put in place some mechanisms to check this development. What is the status now?
Thank you very much. Migration has been part of humanity. If you read the good book, it will tell you that at a point in time, Israelites had to leave Egypt to go and live in the promised land. And if you look at the development history of every country, especially even in the world, the West, America, had its development when many persons migrated from Europe to go and settle there, and when our ancestors were also moved from here as slaves to go and work there. So migration has been part of us. But what society hates is migration, one that is under compulsion, and migration which does not recognize the rights of the person. Ghana as a country is interested in the welfare of its citizens, be they working in Ghana or abroad. What we noticed was that there were a lot of innocent Ghanaians that were transported to some parts of the world, especially within the Gulf states. The Gulf had a peculiar labor arrangement that we call the Khalifa system. What they do is that They invite you, you come and live with them in their homes, you work for them, the hours of work are not stipulated, your passport sometimes is taken away, your telephone sometimes is also taken away, so you have no means of communicating with the outside world. Sometimes even your monthly stipend is not given to you. It is saved and given to you only at a time when you are exiting. As a result, on a daily basis, we have cases of Ghanaians suffering, constantly making calls to, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, calling on them to come and rescue them and what have you. So what we did was to place a temporary ban on export to the Gulf states, especially those who are going to work in the domestic Department of Work, and then those who are going to live with their employers. Ever since, we have engaged most of the recipient countries and have developed bilateral agreement with them. Hitherto, we were not even having our own domestic labor legislation. Last year, we succeeded in getting this same house approved for us a legislation to cover domestic work. So now we have a benchmark that we use in negotiating with sister countries or recipient countries. Besides that, we have also put in place a system whereby the will-be migrants will also be trained. Imagine somebody being picked from a typical, excuse me to use the word, a rural community who perhaps has never used some of these modern gadgets before, and then sent to an environment where you
And that is Ignatius Baffour-Awuah. He is Minister Designate for Employment and Labor Relations.
Since the commencement of this new government, we are just waiting for a full mandate to actually continue the work. So if I'm so approved, it's going to be one of the first issues I'll look at.
Last question. What is the devil known as protocol in recruitment into public institutions and agencies? Can you explain the word protocol in recruitment into public institutions and agencies? Are you willing to pass a law outlawing this discriminatory and unconstitutional practice called protocol in recruitment into public agencies? Yesterday, we had issues with the Minister nominee for Interior because of issues of discrimination into security agencies. Can you deal with the wider issue of discrimination?
Honorable Chair, to confess, I don't know of any devil called protocol. Devil called protocol. I do not know anything about that, but if you are referring to favors that people seek because of perhaps their knowledge with whoever is in charge, I must say that that creates an uneven platform for all persons to compete when there's an offer. And sometimes we limit this to political appointees and what have you, but I must say that in practice, it is even... What I'm saying is that it is even broader than that, because somebody may know you as a member of parliament, and he may have known you as his schoolmate, and he will come to you using that window for an opportunity. Somebody may know you as his church member, and may come to you because you are his church member. He may ask for certain favors from you. If that is what you are referring to as protocol, then I will say that yes, it exists in our society. But I also want to believe that with the recent usage of digital space in public business, some of these things are being eliminated. Because if advertisement is done on the web, the web will not show the political color of anybody that is applying. So I will encourage that going forward, we may have to invest in IT in most of our activities, which otherwise will be influenced by human activities, to reduce that impact of whom you know and what have you.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Honorable nominee, it is estimated that annually 25,000 graduates enter the labor market, yet they do 25,000 graduates enter the labor market, and yet are unable to get jobs. And it is also said that because we do not have unemployment data, it is very difficult to really assess the effect and impact of jobs that have been created and to really ascertain whether we are reducing unemployment in our country. Would you, as a minister, if confirmed, champion a policy to create unemployment data, reliable unemployment data for the country, so we can assess effect of jobs created by a ministry?
Honorable Chair, I'm a bit confused if the honorable member asks about the issue of unemployment data, because the Ghana Statistical Service periodically undertakes what we call the Ghana Living Standard Surveys, and at any time they undertake the Ghana Living Standard Survey, they do put out figures on unemployment. And I don't know whether that would not be a pointer to us as to what the unemployment situation is in the nation. But if you are talking of the labor statistics, I had earlier on alluded to a project called the Ghana Labor Market Information System, which is a tool we are going to deploy to be able to assess and also to be able to inform the nation on day-to-day basis what the labor situation is. So if it is about unemployment, if you care to know, in 2015, when the Ghana Living Standard Survey was done, the unemployment situation was 11.9%. In 2018, when the same thing was done, the figure had dropped to 9.1. And when subsequently in late 2019, we caused another one to be done, the figure had come down to 7.1. So if it is the figure you want to have on unemployment, that is what I've provided.
Thank you, Honorable Nominee. The second question has to do with local content. Would you consider a legislation that would compel all industries, particularly foreign industries in our space, to have Ghanaian workers for, some level of participation of local persons? Because, for example, we have banks today bringing people from their countries of origin. We have construction companies bringing painters, tilers, etc., from places like Turkey. Would you consider a piece of legislation that will allow these construction firms to take some number of Ghanaians when they are awarded contracts in Ghana? And I want you to tie it into this. In November last year, we pioneered a program in Medina called the Medina Job Center. It was an online program to try to connect job searchers to jobs that were available. In less than a month, we had over 2,500 people within the Medina enclave who did not have job applying. We've been trying to connect them to available jobs that are that we from time to time have notice of. Would your ministry want to partner such local initiatives to create jobs for the local communities? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will start from where you ended. I think that you may have to get in touch with the Labour Office. They will assist you. They will look at the technology that you are deploying and perhaps advise you on how best you can improve upon it. But on the issue of local content law, I think there already exists some form of legislation on local content, so we may not have to reinvent that. I don't know whether I've tackled all the issues that you raised, but
yeah, I think that the local content law usually, as it stands now, applies to this upstream industries and not really applicable to the service sector, particularly for like the banking industry, the foreign banks that come to Ghana, and then when you look at the construction firms that we employ to work for us, they come along with professionals to conduct works that could have been taken by Ghanaians. Like I'm giving an example of tiling, painting, such jobs that could be available to Ghanaians.
As I indicated earlier on, I'm quite sure that we already have enough legislation to handle this issue of local content. And then the investment code also requires any foreign investor that wants to invest in this country to meet certain requirements, which the issue of local content is one of the major issues. Sometimes it is not only limited to issues of persons to be engaged, but even getting local partners to work with. I agree with you that we need to watch the employment space, but we are, as I indicated earlier on, the world of work is changing. And sometimes you can have somebody sitting in Ghana and be working for a company in the US using the digital space. So physically, that person may not be working in the US. In the same way, you can also have somebody in the US doing some kind of work in Ghana and earning an income out of that. But that person may not be physically here. So the workspace is becoming very, very difficult to monitor and control because of the deployment of IT. So that's why I indicated earlier on that we want to have a national discussion on employment going into the future, because there are a lot of new developments. Let me give you a typical example. Now, if you want to move from your home to a different place and you can't walk to a nearby lorry station to pick a taxi. You just take your app and then call Uber or any other service provider that can do you that. Most of these people are running companies that are registered outside the country, but using the web, they are operating here. As to what kind of engagement they have or what kind of agreement they have with their so-called employees, it is not known to the labor department, and they are hardly even supervised. So, because they are international in nature and they operate using the web system, so it's difficult to. But if you need to be able to control such distance, you also have to be technologically apt, at least if not above their standard, to be at their level, so that at least you can also be able to compete with them, to be able to monitor them. So I thank you for drawing our attention to this.
Yes, super.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, my colleague were all whips. So, and I hope that he will keep his answers short so that we don't have to go, we don't have to have a marathon. Mr. Chairman, in an answer to an earlier question about the employment statistics, he did promise that he was going to furnish this committee with the details. But I'm curious to know how this data, especially when he says both private and public, how these data are collected, how you collect this data.
You see, Honorable Chair, employment activity is multi-sectorial. you have almost every ministry creating job here or there. So eventually what we do is that we write to the various sectors for them to provide us with information. So what we do is we collect all this information and put them together and transmit same to the public. So that's what we do.
Well, what about the private? Because with the public, I know, with the public sector, yes, that may be easy. What about the private? The private companies, because you said that you, in the case of, you write to the ministries and agencies to collect this data. And I'm saying that in your answer, you said that the figure that you were giving was both private and public. And now I'm saying, you said, in the case of public, yes. What about the private? How do you collect this information from the private sector?
Honorable Chair, by law, every person engaged to work must be entitled to SNIT payment. The person himself makes partly contribution, and then you, the employer, also do some. And you are enjoined by law as an employer to do the lodgement on behalf of the worker. So at any point in time, if you want such information, you can easily go to SNIT, and then they will provide you with that.
No, I'm not talking about SNIT. You have collected data. You have collected information which you are willing to provide this house. And I was talking about how you got them. And in the case of the public, you have shown how you were getting it. Are you saying that you normally pick this information from the private sector, from SNIT data? Is that how you collect those data from the private sector?
It's one of my prime sources of information.
But you know that that may not be accurate, because you may have persons that have been engaged by a company or a private or any persons, but may not immediately start paying SNIT. Sometimes years before that is done, even though it's against the law. So if you are just using data from SNIT, don't you agree with me that it may not give you the most accurate information?
I partly will agree with you, but that is the best we can have for the moment, because the level of informality in the country is very high. Within the employment space, about 80% of work take place within the informal space. And that is the place where we do not have much information. You may complete school with somebody in the same year. You may decide to work within the public space. So perhaps you end up being, say, a teacher. Your records can be traced to where you work. But that person then decides that, no, I have a family business. I want to be engaged in that family business. Before you know, just like you rightly observed, because it's a family business, all such contributions are not done. So information on that person just gets lost immediately the person leaves school. So these are some of the difficulties we have. I must admit that the information we turn out may not be 100% accurate, but I must also admit that it is very close to accurate.
The chairman, is he, having stayed there for 4 years, is there any plan to develop a system that will enable you capture more accurate information, especially from the private sector, in terms of job loss and job gains, people gaining job or people losing job?
Honorable Chair, I thought this is about the third time I'm answering the same question.
If you've answered it, then that's fine. Let me just find out, you spoke at length about the job that has been created by the economy over this period, both public and private. But when it came to the loss, especially within the banking sector, you said you didn't really have graphs on it. Can you tell me, why are you not also interested in counting the number of jobs that have been lost, just as you are counting the jobs gained?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Oftentimes, we are asked, what is the population of Ghana? And the answer is that, oh, we are about 30 million. Hardly do we talk of those that have also lost their lives within the accounting period. It depends on what you're looking for, but I agree that even with the job, and I'm saying so with reference to the question which was posed by the Honorable Member for Asunafo South. Oftentimes, we look at the net figures, leaving out what actually was added on and what actually was left. Because at any point in time, you will have some persons joining employment and other persons either retiring or leaving, and then we also even have those who will be changing jobs in the process. So at any point in time, you can't have some people leaving the net. But I think that for the purposes of our discussions, what we needed most was turning out the figures as regards that which has been the added on. But I have also earlier on made a promise to this House that I will look for that information and provide it.
Yeah, because what we are going to provide this committee had to do with the collapse of the banking, the banking sector.
Yes.
But you know that in almost well-organized economy, they do not only just talk about even people who have gained job or lost job, but they go to even talk about job migration. So job migration. Someone may be having a job today in the banking sector, tomorrow he chooses to move into maybe telecommunication. They track all those, the age bracket, those who have retired, because it helps you in properly analyzing the job market. So will you promise this committee that as if it gets given the nod, you would develop a more comprehensive system within the ministry that will help us to have enough data for analysis instead of just, we've created this job, we don't even know how many people have lost, we don't know how many people have gone on retirement. Will you try to do that to help the discussions on the job market?
Honorable Chair, perhaps as I indicated earlier on, this is also going to be the fourth time this same question is coming up. I have made a commitment that the skills and job project will seek to address some of these things. But even whilst waiting for that, you know, on annual basis, we produce this document, and sometimes we distribute some to honorable members. This contains a lot of information, and some of the answers that we are looking for can be obtained from some of these things. But I must admit that the only constraint with this is that sometimes it is only limited to that which passes through our records. And as I indicated earlier on, we have a lot of happenings outside the formal record. But if I must agree, you must agree with me that work takes place outside the formal space too. So we need a system that will capture that as well.
Yes, I want to take my colleague, the nominee to Youth Employment Agency, the YEA, which was established by Act 887 2015. The staff there are supposed to be permanent staff, right?
We have a combination of both, permanent and temporary.
No, I'm talking about the staff of what do you call YEA. They are supposed to be permanent staff.
We have some that are permanent, we have some that are temporary.
Which ones are permanent and which ones are temporary?
Yes, when you are engaged initially, your appointment will have to go through Public Services Commission for confirmation before you transform into a permanent worker. So until that is done, you will continue to be a temporary staff.
Yeah, but all those who have gone through the Public Service Commission are permanent staff.
To the best of my knowledge.
Why was there a massive transfer of this permanent staff in 2017 across the country?
Transfers sometimes are management tools.
Come again?
Transfers sometimes are management tools. It depends on what management requires of a particular worker. So management, in their own wisdom, will decide that this person will be good working at this place or the other.
But it was massive across the country. Is that normal?
Well, I cannot think for management, but I think that, as I indicated earlier on, I am convinced that transfers are management tools.
Are you aware that when those transfers happen, those who were transferred were not given transfer grants?
It has not come to my notice.
Will you investigate this and get the necessary actions to be taken?
If within their conditions of service, such persons merit transfer grants, why not? It should be paid to them. But if it is not something within their condition of service, then perhaps we have to also be very careful not to implant something which is already not in the organization's scheme.
Now, could you imagine transferring someone, say, from Accra to Boga, and you could imagine that it will not be part of the condition of service for that person to be paid transfer grant?
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Now, unfortunately, this is an agency-related issue. Yes, I have a supervisory role so far as the agency is concerned, but I might not be privy to every minute thing in their condition of service. But as I indicated, if it is within their condition of service, then they should be paid such sums.
So you see to that. You see to that if it is in their condition of service.
I have earlier on made a commitment that if indeed it is in their condition of service, then they merit.
No, I will just
if it comes to me, I will make sure that
it is you now. I'm telling you, and I was seeking your indulgence whether you will see to it.
Honorable member, you are not a petitioner, so to speak. You don't have the capacity to petition. So those who brought it, you tell them to petition him.
No, Mr. Chairman, that is one of the essence of this vetting, to draw nominees' attention to some of the things that are happening, so that they could take steps.
I don't disagree with you, except that when it comes to seeking personal intervention, then the person must apply personally. We draw his attention. Now, when it's brought to him, he is aware of it, that they have to make a personal intervention.
Mr. Chairman, I want to find out from the nominee, why was it necessary to suspend the condition of service for the YEA staff?
Their condition of service being suspended?
You are not aware?
No.
Will you find out whether that truly happened?
Just like any other working group, I am a head of sector. The sector seeks first the welfare of workers. So if indeed they bring it to my attention, I don't see why I will sit down on it. I will have to probe into it to find out why it's been suspended. I will have a very big difficulty accepting that, because as a ministry, one of our core values is to make sure that workers enjoy what we call decent work attributes. And one of the pillars of decent work is to afford workers the right to negotiate. So I'm surprised you telling me that their condition of service have been suspended. I will find out. I'll certainly find out.
Mr. Chairman, I want to find out from the nominee why it became very necessary to recruit project assistants across the country to take over the duties of district directors and regional directors, and some directors even at the national headquarters.
Project assistants of what?
Project assistants were recruited in 2017, 2018. That took over the jobs or the responsibilities of district managers, regional managers, and some directors at the headquarters. And I'm wondering why was it necessary
No,
to
I
do that?
want clarification. Regional managers of what?
Regional managers of youth employment agencies and the district directors and some directors at the headquarters, project assistants were recruited that took over the duties that they were, the duties that they were performing. And I was asking, why did it become necessary for the agency to do this by recruiting project assistants to take over the duties of existing staff?
Well, I have to confess that this is news to me, because I do know in my district, I go there every day and I see the district officer there.
You said you go to your district every day?
No, I'm using it in.
You're suggesting anytime you go there?
Yes, I'm using it figuratively, but what I'm trying to say is that my district officer is always at post, and anytime I ask of information, I don't get any indication that he's not in a position to give me that information because somebody else has to do that. So this is news to me.
Mr. Chairman, I want to find out from the nominee, these project assistants that were recruited, why are they on contract? Why are they on contract?
I have indicated to you earlier on that if somebody is recruited and that person's appointment is yet to be approved by the Public Services Commission, then certainly that person will be on contract. It is only after confirmation from Public Services Commission that the person then becomes a full-time employee.
How long does it take between recruiting persons to Public Service Commission before they get regularized?
Ideally, it shouldn't be more than 6 months, but in practice, sometimes it goes beyond that, depending on the queue available. You know, the Public Services Commission has a lot of loads on their hands, and sometimes it takes quite a long time before some of these things are.
Is it a normal practice that these new persons that have been engaged are put on contract, are put on salary levels higher than existing staff?
I don't have any proof of that.
Are you going to check?
If you want me to check, I will.
Are you aware that for the past 4 years, all the government announcements on salary increases have not been enjoyed by YEA staff?
Well, I cannot be privy to that because unlike public services, unlike other public institutions whose salaries are negotiated at the Public Sector Joint Negotiation Committee, YEA is a subvented organization and they do so with their board. Unless perhaps I inquire from the board, I would not be in a position to know whether they've had increment in salaries. But it is also not automatic, and I want to be quite clear here that unless otherwise, you are paying persons below the approved minimum wage. It is not automatic that any time the Public Sector Joint Negotiating Committee announces an increment in salaries, it is not that it translates automatically to any other organization. At the macro level, you may also have to engage your employees to negotiate. So if there is no opportunity at that level to negotiate, then that one, I may not know about it. Otherwise, the local union will have to negotiate with the management and board for an upward adjustment of their salaries.
And this one again too, can I take your assurance that can I take your assurance that it is something that you take up? Because for 4 years, they might have lost a lot of value on their salary if they did not receive any increase in salary.
Honorable Chair, I wouldn't want to be micromanaging them. that would be unprofessional on my part. I indicated that they have a board that is responsible for their day-to-day management, and I will expect that there will be a good relationship between the board and the workers. So if the board so deems it fit to sit down, and of course, automatically, if it is, if they request for negotiation, the board should be available. If indeed at the negotiation there are difficulties, they can refer to the National Labour Commission for settlement, should there be any disagreement among them.
I know you supervise the agency, and by law, you are supposed to submit even their annual reports to Parliament. And I also believe that you may have a mechanism of interacting with them periodically. Some does it weekly, some will do it monthly. So I'm raising these concerns that as you go, you ensure that the right things are being done there. Because equally, for 4 years, no staff of Youth Employment Agency have been promoted. And all these are serious labor infractions, as you may know. And as the labor minister, there shouldn't be an agency under you with what we call the staff going through this ordeal.
Yeah, the beauty of it all is that we have provisions in the Act whereby any infractions in labor can be addressed. And if any of them is hearing me, and assuming what you are saying is also what is actually pertaining, and perhaps my advice, of course, as a minister, if they bring it to my attention, I can't offer my advice, but I have indicated earlier on that it would not be right on my part to say that, board of YEA, management of YEA, by compulsion, you have to sit with your workers and do ABC. I think that if the workers are convinced that their rights are not being observed, they can resort to law and seek any other privilege that they want to have.
Mr. Chairman, very last question. Are you aware that some of the staff have no decks? No decks, no assigned job schedule after their places were taken by these project assistants that were recruited, who are even yet to go through the Public Service Commission. Are you aware of this?
Well, this is something you know. There's no way I will know about this because
this is something that is so loud within the year.
Honourable member,
YEA, that I'm surprised that the Vice Minister will say he has never heard this.
Honourable member, I visit their national office and occasionally I visit some of the district office, but I have never on any occasion seen anybody not getting a desk to sit on. It may happen. It is not everything I can see with my naked eye, but if that is the case, it ought to be addressed, and I will urge the board to look at it.
And you take keen interest in this? You take keen interest?
I said I will urge them to work.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Yeah, Chairman, thank you very much. Honorable nominee, the banking sector crisis had effect on employment, no doubt. Government so far has paid over 22 billion Ghana cedis to support those, not to support, to enable those who lost their investment to get it back. Some also had their deposits back into their accounts. Since this was a major issue for your sector as well, would you run us through the role your ministry played in ensuring that these Ghanaians who lost their investment
had such a great relief, because 22 billion cedis is no small money from the economy into individuals who otherwise would have been crying and suffering and getting traumatized.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think that as a nation, we sometimes have to take certain hard decisions. The decisions may have sometimes consequences on some aspects of society. Honorable Chair, I think at the point in time, government was faced with a huge option, the option of sustaining the jobs and lives of so many Ghanaians that have deposited their monies with these banks. If the banks were to go bad, then certainly all these people were going to lose their jobs. So government, even though this thing does not actually fall within my ministry, but at least the understanding I had was that government came in with a program to actually bail out some of these banks with the interventions it so did. In the process, millions of people had their deposits saved, their businesses saved. But I agree that the fallout was that some workers also had to lose their job. But if you consider the gain as against the negative aspect of it, the gain far outweighs the negative aspect. Because if you have, say, about 1 million depositors having their deposits saved, as against close to 3,000 or a little above 3,000 also losing their job. I'm not saying that it is a good thing for anybody to lose their job, but the net gain is far outweighs.
So it's a big relief to your ministry.
Pardon?
It's a big relief to your ministry.
It's a big relief to government, not only to the ministry. Yes.
Now let's deal with NBSSI. Within this COVID period, NBSSI is on record to have disbursed 502 million cedis to 288,000 beneficiaries. And again, individual businesses that were created and saved so far as a result of such intervention also came up to 576,000. Is there any collaboration between your ministry and NBSSI with a view to sustaining the gains made? Because you see that largely these are informal sector employment that has been created. The trader at Makola, the yam seller in Efutu, the kebab seller in Tamale, and all that.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, NBSSI is under the direct supervision of the Ministry of Trade. But I agree with you that most of the financial inclusions that they undertook went through the informal sector. One of the core activities of my ministry is looking at the issue of formalization of the informal sector. And one of the tools that we are using for the formalization of the informal sector is digitization and also ensuring financial inclusion. And these were the tools which were deployed by NBSSI. So even though they were responding to COVID issues and also empowering people to be able to in the post-COVID era to be able to find their feet. In a way, they have also contributed in helping us solve one of the major problems we have within the informal space. So, Honorable Chair, I think that given another chance, I would say that government should continue the MBSSI support to the operators within the informal space.
Now, Mr. Chair, we are aware of the flagship private sector initiative by government called One District, One Factory. And so far, government on record has given us some statistics of factories that have been revived, factories that have been established anew, and all that. Is your ministry tracking these initiatives and the jobs that are being created thereto? And if you have been doing so, are you able to give us some numbers?
Honorable Chair, yes, indeed, we are active participants of that program. You know, in every district we have the district implementation committee, and then on that committee we have the labor department being represented. So the labor department is supposed to give technical advice to whoever the investor is at the local level, so that we wouldn't have issues of labor issues or labor infractions even at the commencement of the factory. And then on the issue of jobs created by the One District, One Factory, I think that when I provide the information which I've promised this office of making it available by the close of day, there will be a portion which is attributed to One District, One Factory.
So finally, then I take, Mr. Chair, NEIP, National Entrepreneurship, the program. How has that program helped job creation in the private sector?
Thank you. The NEIP helps to empower especially young persons to be entrepreneurs on their own. And for me, that is the way we should go as a nation. Because unfortunately, if you look at the public sector provides employment for just about 5% of our population, working population. And then the private formal sector also provides employment for just around 7%. So you have close to 85% of employment taking place outside the formal space. Most of the operators within the informal sector are persons that have not had any formal training in the businesses that they are doing. There's difficulty in tracking them as to whether they are making successes or not. They don't have mentors. But with the NEIP program, yes, it is a project that seeks to enhance the capacities of persons who engage in it, but there is that element of it which mentors them and also monitors them even after their post-mentoring period. And for me, that is something which is very good, because we need to be able to turn out successful business persons. I have said that the most resourceful persons you see in town are not people who are employed, but they are the people who rather employs. So if one wants to succeed in life, if one wants to make it big in life, in terms of financial gains, then perhaps one of the best ways to go is to try to be entrepreneurs, and successful entrepreneurs do.
Mr. Chair, just a follow-up on that point. So, with all the tools available and opportunities in the private sector, which, in your view, has created a lot of employment opportunities for the youth, what would be your advice to any Ghanaian youth, graduate for that matter, seeking or desperate for job opportunity in the public sector?
I have indicated that the public sector provides jobs for roughly 5% of the working population. And then the private former also provides jobs for close to 7%. All other jobs takes place within the informal space. But I must also admit that if you do proper segregation of those who are engaged within the formal space, they are mostly those who have higher education and what have you. But I must say, and I can be quoted on record, that the public space sometimes cannot go beyond a certain limit. For instance, if we needed at any point in time X amount of teachers in the system, when we rate the X, unless maybe there's expansion in the school system, you cannot add to it. So the best way to go is to actually go the private way. And in every country, central government is not the major employer. Government rather creates an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. And in doing so, the private sector then engages. That is why oftentimes we say that the private sector is the engine of growth of the economy.
Chair, thank you. I'm done. I'm grateful.
Yes, Honorable Leader.
Chairman, I should thank you. This is Minister for Employment and Labor. I've had the rare privilege to be at that ministry, and we collectively have worked to improve the general labor situation in the country, of some semblance of labor peace and harmony. I want to find out from the minister whether there are any threats to the industrial peace of the country, either by public service workers or any section of private workers.
Yes, there is. The re-emergence of COVID is certainly a threat, because I cannot tell how long COVID is going to live with us. But if the situation should worsen, then, Honorable Chair, you agree with me that it may not be possible for us to do things the normal way that we do. And the consequence of that is that it is going to impact on work.
Currently, is there any category of public workers on strike? Is there any category of public workers on strike, or any group threatening strike, and the reasons for it?
No, not as I'm aware of. There were threats, but within the past few weeks, we've sat down, we are negotiating. So all those who issue threats are back to work and their work.
Senior workers of the University of Ghana and TEU, are they on strike?
I indicated to you that there were threats. I have a letter from Senior Staff Association of Universities of Ghana indicating that they have resumed work. Until
date of the letter, with what assurance did government give them before they resumed work? You have referenced the letter, the date.
Well, I didn't know this question will come up, so I don't have.
Were you to determine what questions?
But I can easily get you a copy of the letter.
What assurance has government given them?
Yes, I indicated that we've gone back to the drawing board. We are negotiating, so it is not a question of assurance. Perhaps the best assurance is to tell them that they will be given fair hearing when they come to the negotiating table.
Chairman, my next question is about working mothers. Working mothers. you know, in the public service, there are a lot of women who, subsequent to the performance and enjoyment of conjugal rights, will naturally become mothers if they are graced by God. Our laws in Ghana provide for 12 weeks maternal leave. The ILO Convention 183 has not been ratified by Ghana, which requires that nursing mothers, in order to take care of their babies while still being paid, are allowed 14 weeks maternal leave. What assurance do you have for mothers within the public service and their entitled right to enjoy this opportunity?
Honorable Chair, may I know from Honorable Member if he means working mothers within the public sector or working mothers within Ghana? Because
within Ghana, those who are entitled to enjoy maternity leave and maternity protection, what assurance do you have
Honorable Chair, my
Ghanaian women?
My honorable colleague has been a minister in the ministry before. He knows how the system works at that ministry. Perhaps our ministry is one ministry which does a lot through consultation, and we hardly, one party to the tripartism hardly takes a decision on its own. So oftentimes some of these things are discussed at the tripartite level to get the buy-in of all stakeholders. I want to assure him that this will be one of the major issues which will be discussed at the tripartite meeting, because let's not forget that
so what's government of Ghana commitment? You represent government on the tripartite. Does government have any plans to increase maternity leave from 12 weeks to 14 weeks?
It's an issue which is being discussed, but as I said, that's why I was very careful when you said increasing the maternity leave within the public space. I wanted you to redefine it, and which you included the other sectors, because you can't have two laws operating within the same country pertaining to one issue. So if we are doing an enactment, it should affect every worker. So yes, if within the constituent bodies that is the way we should go, I don't have any difficulty at all, because it's something that as a nation we have agreed.
Where does the government of Ghana stand? Where do you stand as Minister Designate on this matter?
I am indifferent about it. At a tripartite meeting, if we so
that's
agree,
fine. I know your position.
If we so agree to
what's Ghana's position on the ILO Convention on the placement of domestic workers, ILO Convention 189? What explains why government has not ratified this convention?
Can you come again, sir? Honorable Chair, please can he come again?
ILO Convention 189 on the placement of domestic workers, yet to be ratified by the government of Ghana. It was even part of the submission of the Honorable Okujeto-Ablakwa. Can you explain why we have not ratified it and when we'll do so as a country?
Honorable Chair, my honorable colleague will agree with me that ratification is a process. As part of the process, we even had to domesticate the legislation on domestic workers. So the next move is to come to this house to get the ratification. There's no need getting the ratification.
So why do you domesticate when you haven't ratified? I thought you ratified and domesticate, and it becomes part of your internal laws.
Domestication, the legislation rather even gives us more power than the ratification, because there's no need ratifying when indeed you don't even have laws to be able to implement that.
Are you not aware that Ghana is measured internationally? Then they keep referring to Ghana. They are yet to ratify the ILO Convention on 189, and it may affect how we are measured in terms of some indices.
I indicated that the ratification is a process, and for me, it is not just about how we are measured, but it is about how well we live by the law. And if you ask me, between ratification and having a domestic law to regulate the domestic work, I would even choose having a legislation, which we have done. The next one is just coming to this house.
Chairman, my understanding reading your handing over notes, we do have an occupational safety and health policy as a country developed over the years. We need to assure every Ghanaian worker, whether in the public or the private sector, that minimum standards of occupational safety and health are respected. When will Ghana have an occupational safety legislation, revising the existing one and improving it to respond to the contemporary challenges of health and safety in the workplace?
Oh, really? I like the concluding aspect, because initially I thought you were asking when are we going to have a legislation on occupational health and safety. There are pockets of laws which seeks to address issues of occupational health and safety. Most of them are sector specific, but we are having a conversation to have an overarching act which will look at the issues of occupational health and safety in totality. As I speak with you, we have presented before Cabinet a memo looking at an occupational health and safety policy and act, which will seek to regulate issues of occupational health and safety. I must also admit that there are certain sectors which have their peculiar occupational health and safety laws and which they adhere to strictly, especially if you take the mining sector. But I cannot say same for all other sectors, so that's why we're doing what we do.
Chairman, I would have to take the nominee back to labor market information system. When will we have a functional labor market information system? I recall that in the July of my days at the Ministry of Employment, a component of it, job marking component, was done. The portal has been done. Young people willing and able to work across the country need to have access to information where they can look for jobs. I understand that the opportunities for jobs are limited in the country. I know that the EU pledged support at the time. What is the status of it, and what are you doing to make the LMIS functional?
I've spoken to this, perhaps this is about the fifth time we're going to talk on the same subject. I indicated that
mine is on functionality.
The one, Honorable Minister, Honorable Minority Leader, the one you left behind never worked. It never worked because, one,
so when will you make it work? That's my question.
I have indicated that it is part of the skills and job project that we are implementing.
So when will skills and job project be functional?
I have told you that by the end of the third year of this government, it should be functional. I have said this already.
Chairman, I just want to refer to this document, Fiscal Consolidation and Accelerate Growth and Supportive Inclusive Development, Ghana Public Expenditure Review by the World Bank, which says this, and my question would be built in it. In 2015, a consolidated bargaining process allowed an annual wage increase to be negotiated for the majority of the public sector workforce prior to the 2016 budget preparations, a significant improvement over the previous system. Going forward, annual wage increases should be limited to accommodating a growing number of education and health staff. Will you, with the Minister for Finance, work to ensure? I know that you have kept faith with the Public Services Joint Negotiation Team, getting it cleared before budget, which is significant for our country. But there's concern, and that's why the HR component of the LMIS is important. What are you doing? Ghost names, health, ghost names, education, payroll, all the payroll fraud in Ghana are associated with ghosts, either in health or in education. What are you doing to get that clean? Thank you.
Yes. I didn't get the quote you made from the World Bank statement, so if you can go back to it, I will love it.
Oh, you can comment on it. I don't intend to go back to the code. I'm just saying that a system was introduced, which system provided that we conclude negotiations on public sector wages ahead of budget. Inherited by you, you probably have improved upon it, but there are concerns about health and education. But if you want me to repeat the quote,
yes, I do get it, but
Chairman, I'll go back to the quote. I still have it here. It says a selective public sector hiring freeze implementation in 2015. Then it says in 2015, a consolidated bargaining process allowed an annual wage increase to be negotiated for the majority of the public sector workforce prior to the 2016 budget preparations, a significant improvement over the previous system. Going forward, annual wage increases should be limited to accommodate a growing number of education and health staff. And I tied this to payroll fraud involving education and health.
Yes, I agree that the practice has been that we try as much as possible to finish negotiations ahead of budget preparation. But there's this aspect. Oftentimes when we negotiate, we only look at the general issues which pertain to all workers, leaving out peculiarities that pertains to particular sector. So that is why in Ghana, sometimes when you hear of labor agitations and what have you, it is not necessarily about salary itself, but it is about some form of allowance or the other. That is one of the advantages we have had from the implementation of the single spine pay policy. But the other negotiations which are sector specific are sometimes delayed. And I agree with you on the point that given the same way we try to negotiate salary itself ahead of time, it is also about time we also look at the other sector specific issues so that we can be able to accommodate all of them within the budget period. The disadvantage of not negotiating in time is that sometimes you are also handicapped by budget provisions and what have you, because they were not foreseen at the budget time. So I agree with you, it's something we need to work on.
Chairman, may I know from the nominee, the Labor Department, when will you revolutionize it? There are things that they can do on their own, charge some fees, which makes it more operational and functional to restore the honor and dignity of the Labor Department. In the past, everybody worked there to be assured of searching for a job vacancy and where to find it. Do you have any plans for the Labor Department and the Factories Inspectorate Directorate?
As we speak, there's a technical assistance program at the Labor Department trying to advise me on the way to go. So anytime I get a report of the technical assistance team, it will help me.
For the technical advice, what is your own thinking, policy-wise, to resituate it to take its pride of place?
I have alluded to an earlier question that if you take our ministry, perhaps our core business is spearheaded by the Labor Department. So if the Labor Department is working and working very well, we are seen to be working very well. On the other hand, if they are not working very well, then it translates into our general performance. Yes, so personally, I think that Labor Department and cooperatives, I have said this at our annual meeting at the ministry, that is going to be my focus coming into the new term. And it is not just about revolutionizing the place, but it is also identifying that which is wrong and also making sure that we give them the tools to work with. And that is exactly what we are doing now.
What's the state of cooperatives in Ghana? Probably from 1951 to 2021, what are you doing to change the fortunes of cooperatives in Ghana?
To start with, they have a very weak law. As we speak, they are operating under an ordinance, which is totally outmoded. So we are reviewing the law, and very soon we come to this house with a proposal.
So Ghanaians should expect, under your leadership as minister, a new cooperative legal framework of legislation.
Certainly, I can assure you, we've gone far.
Now, I take you to a quote from Reuters, and Chairman had referred to it earlier, and I quote, "The use of child labor on cocoa farms in top producers, referring to top producers, country Ivory Coast and Ghana, has risen over the past decade despite industry promise to reduce it, according to a draft of a U.S. government-sponsored report, which has been cited by Reuters. Don't you accept some responsibility that you and the Minister for Fisheries and probably Cocoa Board will have to work towards that conclusion?" Chairman referred to socialization. If your father was going to the farm and said, "Akora Dimechi, come with me, let's go to the farm," that's part of our socialization exercise. Or my father going to his groundnut or rice farm decided that I should accompany him non-school days or some other period. But we seem to have given Ghana a reputation which does not reflect our cultural standing against their formal system. Will you work to restore the reputation of Ghana in collaboration with those other institutions?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I had spoken extensively about child labor, and especially with relation to cocoa earlier on. And I indicated that, yes, a survey has been conducted. In fact, at a point in time, we even had cause to actually debate aspects of the findings. We have actually challenged aspects of the findings. So I don't know whether the quote he's making is from the final report, because as we speak, we have had issues with the final report, which we have made our position known to the U.S. Department of Labor and NOC that conducted that particular research. But I agree that the issue of child labor needs to be confronted head on. Unfortunately for us, any research that is done, use our own tools as the basis for the research. The hazardous activity framework, which we developed for ourselves as a nation, is what is used to assess us. In reference to the particular report that you are leading to, initially, when they used their own tools, when they use
Minister Designate, Chairman, I want to. Will you help improve the methodology, which methodology recognizes our cultural and societal values as a people? Because you know that the UN State Department, through the Department of Labor, even downgraded Ghana until you responded to it in 2017. So I just want to know, I don't want, because of time, I wanted to refer to some writing by some authors on the subject. I see Edison Kwame Agbesi, child labor in Ghana, a case study of fishing at Elmina in central region of Ghana. The methodology has to be questioned. And I'm saying that you must provide leadership in questioning the methodology, and that will affect the tool that should be used. Chair.
Honorable Chairman, I have indicated that all these researches use our own tools. It is not an imported tool which they use. Yes, I agree. I personally have sometimes questioned some of the tools, but the tools will also have to meet international standards, because we can also have a tool which is far different from that which is used by.
So if the tool international says that going with my father to the farm is child labor, are you going to agree to it? But let me drift. Mine Workers Union, some workers of Goldfields, Ghana, are concerned about their opportunity to unionize, particularly the Takwa mines. Will you give them a collective bargaining certificate? And will you extend same to other mine workers across the country?
I didn't get the question very well, but if my understanding or what I heard is what you actually meant, I don't think that anybody in the right sense of the word can deny a worker from having a union at the workplace. It is the right of the worker.
We take particular interest in goldfields at Dakwa. Chairman, my final question. Pensions. Is government owing the 12th worker group? You made reference to 3.1 billion, which was in the temporary pension fund account. Beyond it, there's been some accumulation of debt. You have an idea what is outstanding in terms of owings to those pension funds?
I don't have an idea, but the system has been that just like any other payments which are done from consolidated fund, oftentimes they will allow for time to value the...
Does government owe?
I know government owes SNIT, but I don't know...
How much does government owe SNIT?
I don't have idea as to the total quantity.
Does government owe the category of public sector workers on the 3-tier pension scheme under Act 766? And when will you create regional offices of the National Pension Regulatory Authority for the rest of the regions to be served? I'm done, Chairman. I wish the nominee well if he's able to respond to this.
I would say, you know that the National Pensions Regulatory Authority is gradually opening offices in the regions. The Tamil one was supervised by you.